What's going on, everybody? Today we are doing a Q&A about rebooting your mind. So, if you have been doing the last 5 days, we have talked about how to beat your imposter syndrome or your self-doubt, the number one thing responsible for your doubt, the first place to start when having self-doubt, how to shift your self-defeating thoughts, and then lastly, how to actualize yourself into this new being. All right, so Q&A is essentially answering questions that usually come up around this topic. So if you're here live, you can post your questions below. If you catch this later, you can post your questions below later as well, and I will make sure to answer it. Feel free to tag me if you're doing this on Facebook. And anyway, so now I'm going to get started with the questions. Okay, so if you have questions, add them in. But what I'm going to start with is the questions that typically come up around these topics. Okay, so the first question is, how do I know when the imposter syndrome is there? Okay, this is a great question because what happens is we're often living day to day the same way that we did the day before, and we don't always know when the imposter syndrome is actually there. So here's a really quick and easy way to know when the imposter syndrome has arrived. Okay, so think about maybe the last time you wanted to do something and then you stopped yourself and you didn't actually go ahead and do it. Can you think of a time when that happened? Maybe you wanted to even say something in a group setting, but you were afraid that you were going to get judged. Or maybe you wanted to apply to something, but you were like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm good enough. Or maybe you wanted to, tell somebody you like them or you think they look nice or, whatever it may be, but you stopped yourself. You held yourself back. You know what I mean? So when was the last time that happened? That's how you know that imposter syndrome has arrived. Okay, so that's when you know. So what are we trying to beat here? We're trying to beat that thing that's holding us back from moving forward. Okay, so another question is, relating to the number one thing responsible for your doubt is, I don't like what I'm observing. How do I get rid of these thoughts? Okay, so I hear this, I'm laughing because I hear this from my clients a lot. They're just like, oh my God, this is just too much. I can't look at this. Right? When you start to actually look at the things that you're telling yourself, it's horrifying. You're like, oh my God, no wonder I was staying away from that space. You know what I mean? So the thing to remember is, getting rid of these thoughts only happens when you pay attention to them. So have you heard that saying, what you resist persists? So if you're resisting what is going on in your mind, it's going to get bigger and it's going to hold you back more, right? It's going to kind of control you more. But when you actually look at them, when you actually observe them, you can separate yourself from being the observer of the thoughts rather than believing you are the thoughts itself. So let's say you have a thought that is, I am ugly, right? Often we think we are that thought. We're like, oh my God, I am ugly. And we believe our thoughts. But what if you were to just separate yourself and become the observer of that thought and say, hey, this is just a thought that's coming up. In my head, my brain is thinking I am ugly. I'm just observing it. I'm just observing that. I'm not validating it to be true or false or anything. I'm just observing it. I'm separating myself from my brain. So often when you're first starting to look at your thoughts, you do want to run away because it's horrifying, right? The things you're seeing. I mean, when I first started looking at my thoughts, it was very painful to look at the things that I thought about myself. I mean, it's just easier to avoid it, right? It was too much. So I totally get that you want to get rid of it, but I promise you that giving it more attention is actually what's going to help move it over time. And then you're going to build those tools and those skills to be able to work through it. And you're not going to be so afraid of what's going on in here anymore, because you're going to have built a system or made friends with your brain, right? Rather than running away from it. So, and the next question is relating to the first place to start when having self-doubt. So we talked about meeting your thoughts, right? The first place to start is in your brain. Often where we start is in the action place. We're like, okay, well, I should just do it, right? But how long does that last? It lasts maybe a short amount of time, or maybe just a small window. And if you don't do it within those few minutes, then you're shit out of luck. You're not going to do it, right? So we talk about meeting your thoughts, and the question is, and we talk about doing a thought download, which is essentially a brain dump, okay? So I can't get myself to do a thought download. Why can't I do it? Okay, so this is powerful because I actually struggled with this myself. There was like, I think months, if not like, a while before I actually just like sat down and just did thought downloads. And even just this last month, I was like waiting for me to start, and I was going to do it daily and all this stuff, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. So I totally relate to this question. And I realized part of it was just fear of like what's going to come out, like having shame and like embarrassment about your thoughts. But if you just look at it as a place of, I'm just observing again, right? With no judgment and full self-compassion, and you're kind of holding that container for yourself, you make it a safe thing to do, then it makes it easier to do that thought download. So try that, and it is an unknown place in your brain. So of course you're scared, right? It feels like a threat. It feels scary. It feels different. And you're like, well, what am I going to uncover? But I promise you, whatever you uncover is actually going to help you move forward. Because without uncovering it, you are like not moving forward. You're going to be stuck in that same space. So that's why we really need to start looking at our self-doubt on a deeper level in order to move through it. Okay? So it's a new thing. And, just give yourself that compassion and just give it a try. Because I think we just come up with all these fears of like what's going to happen, and like maybe, or you're just afraid like, oh, what if someone sees it, right? You're afraid of like the embarrassment of what you might be thinking. And know that no one needs to see this. This is just between you and you, You can do your thought download and then shred them later. You can do whatever you want. All right? So next one is relating to how to shift your self-defeating thoughts. So the question is, I can't shift my thoughts no matter how hard I try. My negative thoughts keep winning. What should I do? Now, here's something to remember, okay? You've been thinking these thoughts again and again for days, for weeks, for months, for years, for likely decades. And some of them, a lot of them, since you were a child, since you were a kid. So know that these are thoughts that have been adopted, and they've been circling around and around and around and around and around forever. So in order to try to shift it, it's going to take quite a bit of effort. As much as effort it did to repeat those thoughts all that time, right? Now, possibly it kind of became automatic thinking because it kind of seeped into your subconscious and you just repeated it over and over again, right? So the first step, what I want you to do is realize that this is a pattern. So it's going to take some time to shift it. It's not going to be a one and done situation. This is going to be a practice that you're going to develop. Okay. And the first thing to do is have self-compassion for yourself when you're in that moment. Now, I actually had a moment similar to this just a few days ago where I was just in my stuff and I just was like mad and angry and upset. I was mad at myself. I was mad at the world. Like, I did not want to shift nothing. Okay. I just wanted to stay in my anger. You know what I mean? And I was having a hard time shifting my thoughts. So what I decided in that moment, since I wasn't able to actually shift it, What I knew for sure was that I didn't want to feel this way all day because I was going to a conference and I was like, I do not want to take this energy with me. I don't want to feel like this all day. So that was like the first decision I made, that like, okay, I don't want to feel this way all day. So what can I do in this moment if I'm not able to completely shift my thoughts? And at that moment, I chose self-compassion and I just spoke to myself lovingly. And that made all of the difference. I like started crying. Like I was like, Aditi, I know you've been working really hard and you've been doing the best you can. And I promise you that everything you're doing is paying off. I love you so much. And bitch, you're fucking doing it. Okay. You're fucking getting up in the morning and you're fucking showing up. And I'm so proud of you. You're fucking doing it. You're making it. Okay. You haven't given up on yourself. And I just started crying. I realized that I was just so overworked in general and just frustrated. And it's just like, all I needed was some love. I just wanted to know that someone cares about me. I just wanted to be acknowledged in that moment. And what I needed was my own attention, right? Because so often we try to get that from outside and that doesn't work. Because maybe 50% of the time it will work and 50% of the time it won't work. And what are you going to do that 50% of the time it doesn't work? You're just going to feel shitty? Or are you going to be there for yourself? Right? So self-compassion is how I would handle that. And doing that shifted everything. Because once I had that self-compassion and once I spoke to myself in that way, everything shifted that day. I was able to get an amazing seat at the conference, which I was upset about because I was late, right? I was like, I'm going to get a sucky seat. Everything sucks. My life sucks. I suck. Not only that, someone came and gifted me a VIP bag, which was like from $1,000 ticket. What? Those voices are almost always negative. You have to talk them out of it. Exactly. Exactly. So I can't see names. Okay, so I thought it might be Misty. Hey, Misty. So I'm looking on my phone because I can see names on my phone. Exactly, right? So now the next question is relating to how to actualize yourself into being like this new self that you're creating, right? How do you become that? So this is really, really powerful. So the question is, I don't know how to step into a new self when the evidence of my old self is very present. This is so good, right? So imagine like in a very obvious example, right? You're trying to move into a place of abundance, but yet you look at your bank account and your bank account don't reflect no abundance. You guys know what I mean? But you're like trying to feel abundant, but you're like, it ain't working because I don't have enough money to fill up my gas right now. Whatever it may be, right? So what I want you to know is your old self and your new self are going to be living in coexistence for a little while when you do this process until you start training yourself to give more energy to one over the other. Now, where is most of your energy at right now? Your old self. Most of your energy is in your old self, right? So how can you shift that into this new part of you, into this new reality that you're creating? One is to just accept and realize that there's going to be some tension and friction between these two selves of you. Because one part of you is just going to feel damn shitty. And another part of you is going to feel on top of the world. But you're going to want to choose the shitty because that's what you've been choosing. Because it's normal. It's natural. It's predictable. It's certain. And we're afraid of the unknown. We don't completely know what this new self is like. But maybe we have a little bit of an idea. And putting your trust into that is where all the magic happens. So it's a choice on where you want to focus and where you want to give your energy to. And it's funny because I was just talking about this with somebody in an area in my life where two frictions of myself are living in coexistence. But yet my brain wants to go into the negative stuff right away. It's like, oh, but all these things aren't working out. All of this sucks. It sucks. Everything sucks. My life sucks. But then what about all the things that are working? Why are we not paying attention to that? Why are we not giving more energy to that? You know, I'm making more recurring income in my business now than I ever have. But where was my mind going? Okay, yeah, but I still don't have enough to do this. I still don't have enough to do that. Okay, bitch, but you're making more than you ever have. So what the hell's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Now, I don't recommend you yell at yourself, but sometimes I just automatically end up doing that because I get mad. Get mad at myself. Right? So I'm like, hey, love. I have to consciously make effort to put on a loving voice because it's not my natural. And I started calling myself baby girl, you know, to like just give myself that love and attention that we all crave. I'm like, hey, baby girl, what's going on right now? What you feeling down about? I'm like, hey, did you realize that last year, this is how much you were making and now this is how much you're making? I mean, sure, maybe you're not exactly where you want to be, but damn, you're moving on up and it's only going to keep moving on up from here. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. That feels good. So making that choice to give more energy to the part of you that you want to expand. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. If you have any more questions, let me know. Thanks for hanging out here. And I did see that about the worksheet, so I'm going to go look at that right now and I will post about it. All right. Love you guys so much. I'm going to be teaching 3 classes about each of these topics in full force. So look out for that. It's going to be happening next week. All right. Love you guys. Bye.